Hi everyone, welcome back to the Hideaway. Hope you're all okay. So today I'm making a house sign, but this is not just any house sign. The name of the house is a little unusual and it made me smile when I first heard it. So stick around and I'll show you how I carved it and of course reveal that really quirky name along the way. So for the house sign, I've got this bit of wood here that I've actually taken off a restoration project that I'm going to be doing over the next kind of few weeks or so. You'll see that in upcoming videos. But this piece was added, and it's not really in keeping with the restoration piece that I'm going to be doing. So I've taken it off, and I thought actually I'll upcycle this, a true upcycle, and turn it into something else. So I'm just going to sand it down a little bit, and this will be used for making the house sign. So like the majority of my projects, I started off with sanding. I spent the majority of my life on this sander, but it was a relatively small piece, didn't really take too long to get all the old finish off. Right, so it's had a good sand. I had to go down to 80 grit. It just wasn't touching it with a 120, but that's fine, whatever. So I'm going to cut out a circle for this house sign, just my preference. So, and to do that, I'm going to use this. I've got this jig for cutting circles with a router, palm router. I'll put a link in the description. So I'm just going to find a central point and then just route it out using this router. This is pretty cheap and cheerful, this one, but should just do the trick for what I need. And then once I've done that, I'm then going to put on, using carbon paper, I'm then going to just put that image on, and that's what I'm going to route out. And then once it's been routed out, I'm then going to fill it with resin. Once I've done that, I'll then show you what the name of the house is. I think it's quite funny, but my stepdaughter-in-law, who this is for, she's a bit quirky in that way and came up with this quite unique name. So I'll show you that once I've put this on. So this jig is pretty easy to use. Once you attach it to the router base, you just find your central point, you put a nail or screw to hold it in place, and away you go. On this piece, I had to make about 4 passes to cut all the way through. Right, so I've transferred the house image onto here using carbon paper, and it's gone on pretty well. So now it's time to put the name of the house onto here. So my stepdaughter-in-law would like to call it Helen the House. So that's what it shall be. I just find it a bit quirky, a little bit funny. Some people might love it, and she obviously does. But yeah, so I've just found just a normal font here, and I'll just transfer this on with the carbon paper. So once I've transferred the lettering onto the piece, it was time for routing. I'm just using my DeWalt router here with a CNC carving bit. It has a 8mm shank, so I needed a collet adapter. I've changed the router base, as you can see. It's not a standard base. The two handles on this router base allows for great control when carving. I just like to use it when doing power carving. Before anyone comments, and just for clarity, the name Helen the House really made me chuckle. It's not every day you see a house named after a person. There was no offence intended, I'm just sharing a smile. I just find it charmingly unusual. So once I'm done with the routing, I get my Dremel out with a glass engraving bit. They're really useful bits for cleaning out engravings. They don't take away too much material. And then I get a bit of sandpaper on a bit of plywood and then just sharpen up the edges. Then it's over to the router table to put a nice edge on the piece, but it's here that I discover something rather unwanted. So we have an unexpected and unwanted guest, which is some woodworm. I guess it's kind of to be expected. This is a piece that I'm reusing and upcycling from a restoration project that I'm going to be working on next. I had half an inkling when I saw the piece and I was sanding it down, because some of the old woodworm holes I think had been filled here, so that I don't think they're active. I think they are dead. So where you can see this lighter colour here, not that lighter colour there, just in there, that's filler, that's not kind of sawdust or anything like that. So the holes are relatively dark, but the more I've sanded, the more you can see. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat them just to make sure they are all dead, and then once I've done that, I'm going to I'll apply the resin kind of in the lettering and the rest of the house outline, but then I think I'm going to use wax to fill it, to fill the other holes. I think that will probably give me the finish that I want, because I was going to wax this anyway, but I'll just wax it with a particular colour. So a bit annoying, a bit frustrating, but not the end of the world. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm using Rustin's woodworm killer for this. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm using a foam brush to apply this. It gets soaked up into the foam, and then I can really force it down into the holes. I'm giving it a good application all over, then wait for it to dry, and then apply another coat. After some experiments, I've had one of my famous hideaway changes of mind. I decided not to use wax. I tried it on another piece, a bit of scrap, and the wax didn't do as good a job as I thought. The holes showed up a little bit too much for my liking, so I decided to use some filler. I tried that on some scrap as well, and it's a little bit better. People get freaked out about woodworm, but they don't need to really. It can be really destructive, I appreciate that, but if it's treated properly, then it's not a big of a problem. Of course, if it goes too far, then the material just disintegrates. Right, so after dealing with all those pesky woodworm holes, it was time to get back to it. So I sanded down all the filler, then just sprayed some lacquer just to try and prevent any resin bleed, and then it was on to mixing the resin. I used some mica powder, which I've used before. My stepdaughter-in-law's favourite colours were black and gold. She's a big Nottingham Panthers fan, so that's what colour I was going to use for the resin. So once I was finished with the pour, I just used a mini blowtorch just to get rid of any surface bubbles. Waited 24 hours for it to cure, and then it was onto the sanding. It was really annoying actually, because I was hoping I could run this through the thicknesser just to get rid of the excess
resin, but my calculations were a little bit off and it was about 5mm too big for the thicknesser, so sanding it didn't take too long, but I was really hoping the thicknesser would have just done it in seconds. Anyway, hey ho. It was around about this point, whilst I was sanding, that I'd noticed that some of the fills that I'd done in some of the woodworm holes probably weren't going to take the finish that I was hoping for. So I think I needed to give that a bit of a rethink. But once I finished removing the excess resin, it was then time to go through the grits. I went 120, 240, 400 and 600. I don't think I really need to go much higher than that on this piece. So it's on to finish. I'm using a dark oak stain here. I'll leave a link in the description. But I'm using a particular technique where I'll apply some and then almost immediately wipe it off. I've done this before. It can help provide like a slightly different finish to the piece. And then once I've done that, I then decided to actually sand it off partially, which might seem a little bit kind of counterintuitive, but it gives it a bit of a rustic feel, and I thought that was probably going to be the best way I could cover some of the woodworm holes that I'd filled but weren't taking the stain, and it felt like it was the best approach to take because it just wasn't blending, it wasn't taking, so that's what I ended up doing. Once I finished staining and sanding, I then added some feed and wax to the piece. And after 20 minutes or so, I just buffed it up just to give it a nice sheen. Then I added a sawtooth hanger just to the back, just so it could be hung up. This is probably going to go inside the house rather than outside, so sawtooth hanger was perfect here. Okay, so I'm all done. It's turned out a little differently to what I expected it to look like before I started, but that's mainly down to the woodworm and the woodworm holes that I found along the way. So I had to think on the fly a little bit on this one. I had to be a little bit creative maybe with the finish. I'm relatively happy with it. It kind of looks okay, I guess, but you might be able to sense my disappointment. I think I just had this picture in my head of how I wanted it to look, and it's not quite turned out that way, but you might think differently, so please let me know your thoughts. You might agree with my way of thinking, you might completely disagree and think it looks great, but I'd love to hear from you all. Yeah, so please kind of like and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and chuck in some comments, let me know what you think. Anyway, enough of my rambling. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.